Welcome to part 2 of week 3, Ethical Issues in Computing and Technology, Winter Session 2024. Last time we talked about sections 7.1 and 7.2 in the base textbook, and now we'll talk about 7.3 and 7.4. 7.3 starts on page 332. Now this section is one where I got a little bit riled up. I mentioned previously that you can notice bias and disagree with the author even of a textbook that you're reading. That doesn't invalidate the knowledge that lay within that textbook, but it does help you to recognize that it's good to get multiple perspectives on any issues that you're interested in knowing about. Because in this section, I really do think she presents a very strong false dichotomy. She talks about how there are people who are pro-technology and there are people that are anti-technology, and those are the Neo-Luddites. And they are after a fictional person at the advent of the Industrial Revolution. So if you haven't learned about the Industrial Revolution, it was the change in the economy and the way that people lived that arose as technology did. So prior to automated processes and machinery, of course, people worked in much smaller scopes. They either had a farm in which they grew and made the things that they need and maybe some surplus to trade, or they worked in small artisan shops like the butchers or the blacksmiths. And as technology arose and we got factories and centralized ways of creating and mass producing goods and services, life radically changed. And people did not react well, as most people don't in many situations of change. But there were good reasons they didn't react well. There weren't workers' rights, and working in these factories was incredibly dangerous. Many people were injured or died and had no recompense, no payback. Children, child labor. So people saw that their previous way of life was being destroyed. And it was incredibly bad for most of the people that were working there. And they went in and they would smash machinery. They had lots of newsletters and ways to communicate with other people in this movement, and Ned Ludd, L-U-D-D, was the fictional sort of protagonist of this. So people who were anti-technology came to be known as Luddites. And some people proudly call themselves Neo-Luddites because they think all technology has ruined what it means to have a meaningful and fulfilling human life. So we might know that people have criticized technology from the beginning. So philosophy is said to have begun in earnest in the Western world with the ancient Greeks, specifically Socrates. He never wrote anything down, though. So this is around, 400, 300, I think he died in 399 BCE. So he was 80 when he passed, circa. And he thought writing things down made your memory worse. So even that simple of a technology, writing things down, had critics in one of the smartest people that lived at the time. So people will always criticize things, and that can be a piece of evidence that you can use to sort of be skeptical when someone is globally repudiating or rejecting huge aspects of human life, or even saying that they know how things are going to be in the future because of whatever it is that they're criticizing. At the same time, anything that we create, whether it's technology, on computing or medicine or politics or art, there are going to be downsides that happen. There are going to be unintended, unexpected consequences that we are going to have to deal with, yes, as individuals, as Base likes to point out, but also as communities, cities, states, nations, the world. And she points out some of these neo-Luddites that just want to go back to life before the Industrial Revolution, life before technology, when we spent our time creating things that we needed. It gave us a sense of purpose, when we were connected to our families, friends, and communities in a much deeper sort of way. And these neo-Luddites that she brings up have a certain set of problems they say technology causes. And you can find a pretty long list, bottom of page 334. Computers cause massive unemployment. They manufacture needs. So we don't actually need constant entertainment and to communicate with one another 24/7. But the creation of these technologies force it to be part of our lives. Computers cause social inequity. Computers cause social disintegration. They're dehumanizing. They separate us from nature and destroy the environment. Benefit big business and big government most. Use of computers thwarts development of social skills, human values, and intellectual skills in children. So that last one you might recognize that from my viewpoint I was arguing against it as well, and sort of siding with Base in the sense that people will always criticize things and not necessarily be able to see what's going to happen in the long term with anything. I have a couple of tabs open here, and I was thinking about flipping to them to show you some of the science, technology, and society hypotheses about how technology functions in the world. But with my recording application, I'm a little afraid it's going to just crash. It has in the past. So I could say that first tab that's right next to it, technological determinism, is the idea that once a technology is unleashed into the world, it has a life of its own, and we can't control it at all. And Base, I think, rightly criticizes the so-called neo-Luddites for being technological determinists, thinking that technology is something apart from human responsibility, when in reality, we're constantly shaping how technology works and is involved with our lives, just as much as technology is affecting who we are and how we live. It's a feedback loop. And we need careful consideration of how we might use our powers as individuals, yes, but also as deliberative communities to improve how technology affects us. So she spends some time just kind of knocking down all these things, saying that they're social problems, that yes, technology creates some aspects that are new, but they're old problems. New technology has always caused unemployment, and then more employment later when people get skilled in the new technologies. Social inequality has been around forever, and there's no reason to think that technology necessarily exacerbates it. There are ways, especially I think I want to point out that when technology can reach millions or even billions of people, I do think inequality can be easily exacerbated. misinformation, misapplication, because those views can be so quickly spread out. Let me think. On page 339, she says, right before nature and human lifestyles, the argument that capitalists or technologies manipulate people to buy things they don't really want, like the argument that the use of computers has an insidiously corrupting effect on computer users, displays a low view of the judgment and autonomy of ordinary people. It's one to differ with another person's values and choices. It's another to conclude that because of that difference, the other person is weak and incapable of making his or her own decisions. And I think this is a really clear way where she is putting all of the responsibility on the individual choices. Now, yes, everyone should be able to decide if they want computers in their household, if they want broadband, how many cell phones that they want, what kind of other technology that they're going to utilize and have a part of their life. But to think about how it globally affects psychology or community bonds or the long-term way that we interact with one another, or how giant networks of information exchange are going to affect democracy in the long run, I don't see how individual consumer choices, no matter how smart you are going to be able to think about those kinds of problems. We're all limited. No individual choices will be able to add up to that kind of global knowledge about things. And when you try to say that it's all about freedom of individual decisions, I think you're doing an either or sort of thing. And of course, there are tons of accomplishments of technology. We live longer, we have access to better health care, we have more comfort as individual people than a king could have imagined in the Middle Ages, with washing machines and cars and technology and access to millions of books. Yet, in the final section, the difficulty of prediction, I think she touches on something that both helps her case and hurts her case. She gives a lot of funny quotes from people on page 345. The telephone is so important, every city will need one. That is an anonymous quote. My personal desire would be to prohibit entirely the use of alternating currents. They're unnecessary and dangerous. That's Thomas Edison. I think there's maybe a world market for 5 computers. The chairman of IBM in 1943. Popular Mechanics in 1949 said computers in the future may only weigh 1.5 tons. And this is just absolutely the truth. We cannot predict big technological revolutions and shifts. We cannot predict what's going to happen in the future. We cannot predict how some kind of small innovation is going to have a massive influence down the road. People try and try and try, and they most of the time do not succeed. So that lends credence to the idea that we can't say that technology is all good or all bad, and we need to work as individuals and groups to see the problems that arise and meet the demand to fix it. Finally, we get some things that have been more salient or in the forefront of people's imaginations in the last year or two: generalized AI and the technological singularity. So we think about a not very distant future where intelligence-enhancing devices, artificial intelligence, intelligent robots change our society and ourselves in very profound ways. That's page 347. The technological singularity itself is the point where artificial intelligence is supposed to advance so far that we can't comprehend as just plain old humans what happens on the other side. It's too far beyond our intelligence, too smart. We can't think about it. We just have too limited of tools. And there are arguments for it and against it. The rapid increase in technological computing power, which means that eventually computer hardware will be so sophisticated and fast enough and small enough that it could rival a human brain. But hardware progress might slow down, or we might not be able to develop the necessary software to actually recreate generalized intelligence or consciousness. We can't predict. Remember, that's one of the things we just learned. So what do? How do we protect ourselves in something that is an actual existential threat, meaning it threatens our entire existence as human beings? And the answers that she gives are maybe a little lackluster. A portfolio of resilient responses. The only thing that we could really do that would really prevent it, she says, would be a relinquishment completely in privacy, civil liberties, business autonomy, and free markets. So this is, again, a sort of individualized solution, and maybe we could think about the other perspective, where if it truly was an existential threat, what would we be willing to compromise? The balances between the risks and the rewards. With that, we're going to end the videos on Chapter 7. I'll see you in Part 3 when we talk about Chapter 8.